to Policy and Politics with me, Tarun Nangia. United States of America is now seeing a new administration under the leadership and the presidentship of Joe Biden. What this bodes for India? Also, the emerging relationship issues between India and China and how all this was developed. This is going to be a very interesting conversation today on Policy and Politics. And I have with me Ambassador Skant Tayan. Sir, I would like to thank you for sparing your time for this episode.
You're welcome.
So could you lay the ground for us today?
After the Trump administration's quite strong policies towards China, because they fully understood the challenge coming from China from different quarters, and that for United States' future in the strategic field, economic field, technological field, the main challenge is coming from China, which needs to be dealt with. Now, in the Biden administration, the signals are there, but they are a little mixed. And there are two important signals. One, when Joe Biden was a candidate, he had written a long article in Foreign Affairs magazine of the United States last April 2020 as a candidate. And there have been subsequent statements, and also by the new administration team of President Biden, the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, etc. And one can fathom where exactly their thinking is headed. Now, in President Joe Biden's or candidate Joe Biden's foreign affairs article, the main thrust is against Russia. And he has called President Putin's as a kleptocracy and authoritarian kleptocracy, and that shows a little bit of a poorer understanding of what the realities are. And on China also, he says that just challenges coming from China, but they can work together, etc. Whereas in Secretary of State Antony Blinken's confirmation hearings in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he very clearly said that the main challenge to United States in future will be coming from China. So we have to see where it is going. It is now like a triangle: Russia, China, and United States of America. And we need to make sure that the Russia-America arm of this triangle does not become too long, and because the China-Russia arm of this triangle is becoming shorter and becoming stronger, and this will have profound implications for our own strategic calculations.
Now, what we saw is Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and Lloyd Austin, who's Defense Secretary, who's just taken over in America, and the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval of India and his counterpart Jake Sullivan in America. They both had a call yesterday, and the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that he wants to build and consolidate ties with India. Is it a geopolitical reality that these two nations will inevitably come even more closer, given the issue with China that India confronts?
Yes, there is a certain inevitability to closer India-US relations, because the global challenges which will be coming to the democratic world, India being the largest democracy, America being the oldest democracy, will be from China on one side and from Islamic terrorism from the other side. So our interests converge. And it is reflected that since late last century, and particularly after 9/11 attacks on the United States, by terrorists, there has been a very strong bipartisan support for strong India and United States relations, both in United States and in India. So there is a very strong foundation, but in actual practice, how much will be done? That of course depends on the administrations. And former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was very forthright and very clear in expressing full support for India after the Galwan Valley clashes, after the Eastern Ladakh clashes. And we have to see whether the new administration of President Biden will also be equally forthright in calling China the guilty party when there is intrusion into India through the line of actual control.
Now, coming to the China question, do you think the ongoing problems or issues with China, the gravity of which even India couldn't fathom in the earlier days of how serious China was, given that intrusions now are not only in Ladakh but Arunachal too? Do you think that something at the basic level has gone wrong in the understanding between the two nations, which can now be seen on the border?
If we read and listen to the observations made by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh over the last 7-8 months, and by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, including the statement today in the conference of Institute of Chinese Studies, it seems that the government of India, our policymakers, have fully understood the gravity of the situation, but are not very clear why suddenly Chinese have become aggressive, and China started amassing troops last spring in eastern Ladakh. And a new equation is being sought in India China relations because the peace and tranquility at the line of actual control, which had been very carefully built since 1988, when Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, after 1954, first prime ministerial visit, he had gone to China, that has been unfortunately shattered by the Chinese actions, not only in eastern Ladakh. There are reports about Arunachal Pradesh, and of course, just last week there was another clash in Sikkim, where Chinese in this winter tried to again cross line of actual control into Indian side and were given a very strong rebuff by our alert Jawans.
Uh, it is said that our Prime Minister Narendra Modi met his counterpart uh, more times than all other prime ministers in the history of India put together. That is the extent of investment he has done personally to build the relationship. Do you think it has? That is why also India has been surprised by China's behavior.
That is a fact. Over different administrations, starting from even Atal Bihari Vajpayee, then Dr. Manmohan Singh, and now by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, very special attention has been paid for having good relations, better relations with China. And in 2017 in Almaty, when President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi had met, it was clearly said that the differences will not be allowed to become disputes. But unfortunately, after that, this was the Doklam happened, and then that was somehow resolved after great difficulty. And then we had these two informal summits, Wuhan and our
Mamallapuram.
Mamallapuram. But somewhere the Chinese attitude and Chinese perception has changed. And last year, their actions, amassing of troops, disturbing the peace and tranquility, and then that clash where 20 of our soldiers and an unknown number of Chinese soldiers lost their lives was really a watershed event. because this was the first time after 1975 that there was a loss of life on the line of actual control. So we are in some new territory. And Foreign Minister Jaishankar this morning said that India-China relations are at a crossroads with very serious implications for the future. And he has summed up well. And it is for the leadership of the two countries and policymakers to go back to the drawing board and see what has gone wrong, why has it gone wrong, and very clearly, uh, Foreign Minister Jaishankar has said that there has to be mutuality in relations, mutual respect towards each other, mutual sensitivity towards each other's core interests, and a appreciation of interests of the two countries. It cannot be one-sided. So a new equation is being formed in India and China relations. It may take some time, but India's stand is very clear. Even on LSE, our stand is very clear that a status quo ante of March, April 2020 should be restored. And nobody can say anything against it, because that is exactly what if peace and tranquility and all those agreements and arrangements which we have since 1988 of keeping the border peaceful, the line of actual control peaceful, they have to be respected by both sides, both in letter and spirit. So the parameters of better relations between India and China are clear, and it is for China now to respond.
Now, given that India has given China a 65 or 60 billion dollar surplus in trade every year, it in a sense surprised some Indian analysts that even this did not prove a deterrent for China to unilaterally act on at the Indian border. Do you think these actions further push India into having better relations with America as an inevitability? It is something that will happen given what is happening with China.
Initially, the policy was that the resolution of the border dispute between India and China could be a slow process, could be deferred, but the relations in all the other sectors would continue to flower, and that led to this trade of almost $90 billion and this huge trade deficit. But any tension on the line of actual control or this kind of mass mobilization of troops means that India-China relations are now at a crossroads, and this kind of trade cannot continue. Already we have seen action on our side to restrict the operation of Chinese companies, IT companies, etc. in India, because China's behavior and actions on line of actual control are those of an enemy. And China will have to be treated like that. And in any um, difference of this kind with a major country like China, India is fully within its rights to seek friends, to seek allies, to seek partners. And in that, United States is one of the ready partners. Japan, Australia, there are so many other countries, but it is inevitable that in this background, India and United States come closer politically, strategically, economically, and militarily.
Taking this forward, Ambassador Tayal, there has been a lot of talk about the Quad and Indo-Pacific Charter, Indo-Pacific Alliance, and in which Australia, Japan, India, and America come together. Do you think that progressing?
It is progressing. It is a meeting of minds and an appreciation of the threats which endanger the peace and stability of the entire Indo Pacific region. And it is a work in progress. It is not a quasi alliance, it is more a harmonization of policies, harmonization of actions, and the Malabar exercise has been a manifestation of the military part of the Quad because Australia has also joined the Malabar exercises. But in the ultimate analysis, if you read the writings of the new National Security Advisor of the United States and Kurt Campbell, who will be the main advisor for Indo-Pacific in the White House, they say that they realize that for America to contain China alone will not be possible, and it will be their policy to strengthen those countries which have some difficulty with China and which are willing to take on China. And in that category, India is foremost because we have a long border problem with China. India is at present facing Chinese aggression, and India does not want American boots on the ground. India wants technology, India wants military capacity, India wants intelligence, India wants some sharing, cyber information sharing, and all that America can provide. So there is a very strong basis, strong ground for very solid cooperation between India and US, India and Japan, India and Australia. But in my view, it will continue to remain bilateral. And I do not foresee that Quad as a group will take joint action in the foreseeable future. But the other three countries of Quad and India on bilateral level will be working very closely in sharing of intelligence and building capacities of each other.
So, and how do you think this will all pan out with Russia on the other end? India will have to balance that interest, or do you think Russia's influence, at least in the Indian subcontinent, will be far lesser than what it was earlier?
Russia is a great power. It is a global and strategic partner of India. India, 60% of our military equipment comes from Russia. Our nuclear submarine is on Russian technology. Our aircraft carrier Vikramaditya is of Russian technology. So we have very close relations with Russia. We have very close relations with United States, and any divergence between United States and Russia is not good for us. And it should be our endeavor to try to narrow down the differences between Russia and United States, because Russia is no longer an ideology driven state. It is not trying to make other countries communists. Cold War is over. But in the American mind, they are still a prisoner of the past. They are not able to see clearly that the real challenge, very threatening challenge to United States supremacy in the world comes from China, and Russia. Russia's help can only be in, say, Iran or in the West Asia, etc. And they should not demonize President Putin so much that Russia goes close to China, because that would be of strategic harm both to United States and to India.
Do you, under the Biden administration, you saw there was President Trump's visit to India. Do you see you foresee bilateral visits between the Biden Joe Biden coming to India and our Prime Minister also visiting United States?
Very much so. One should not forget that President Barack Obama had come to India twice, and our Prime Minister had very good relations with President Barack Obama. He had very good relations with President Donald Trump. It is India's leadership and America's leadership. Whether it is X, Y, or Z is not very important. And in the American perception, US perception, President Joe Biden's perception, after all, his vice president is of Indian origin, at least half. There is a strong bond. We are both very strong democracies that exists, And there, I have no doubt that once the pandemic is over, because right now the main focus of President Joe Biden is on containing the spread of COVID virus in US and trying to put the economy back on the rails. But in my view, a very strong dialogue at the second level, that means at the level of the NSA of US and India, at the level of the Secretary of State of US, Blinken, and our Foreign Minister Jaishankar, that would be very critical, because in my view, President Joe Biden may be more focused on his domestic policies, and his external policies will be more or less run, of course, under President Joe Biden's directions, but they will be run by his NSA and his Secretary of State. So dialogue at that level for me would be very, very critical and very, very important, and they should meet as early as possible.
Okay. Now, do you see any pitfalls in the India-America joint story, and what could they be?
On one or two issues, there has been some good beginning. For instance, the visa issues, immigration issues. The Biden administration has already passed some executive orders which would help a very large number of people of Indian origin for H-1B visa, for the family green card, etc. So that is one irritant less. But we can expect continuation of some differences on the trade field, intellectual property field. United States, they want more opening of Indian market, but Prime Minister can try to explain to American administration that just as President Biden has issued this call of buy American, in India also we have 1.3 billion people, we are very young population, so it is very important that our young generation finds jobs, finds employment. So if we have a focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat, if we are trying to have more manufacturing in India, President Joe Biden should be able to understand that any policy has to be ultimately be in the interest of the people of the country. And it cannot be some theological position just of free trade, etc. And the second point of friction, which will very much be there, it is already on the horizon, that under President Donald Trump, human rights, etc., were irrelevant, and he never asked, or his administration never asked any uncomfortable questions on some issues which are going on in India. And some of the very vocal congressmen of Democrats, Jaipal, etc., they have some serious problems with some of the actions attributed to the government of India or Indian agencies or supporters of the ruling political party. And on that, Indian establishment will have to have a dialogue with America, and at different levels, State Department, or they have all kinds of committees, Congress, this and that. And it cannot be brushed under the carpet, because for President Donald Trump, human rights was not an issue, but for the President Joe Biden and his entire team, human rights is a very important issue, very high on their agenda, and we have to be conscious of that.
It was a good conversation, Ambassador Tayal, with you today. We'll carry forward this in the coming few months as the relationship progresses, waiting for the announcement where either Biden or our Prime Minister Narendra Modi announces his visit to America. The long impending trade deal has yet to be signed, so we have to see what also happens on that, because the trade deal is now discussed for well over 3 years, if I'm not wrong. But all said and done, thank you so much for coming on the program and taking out time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.